Paul and I were down in Vancouver, Washington, working on this project. So it kind of took our understanding to a whole new level, and it exposed us to a bunch of people there. And Paul the whole time, ever since he'd seen that microprocessor article, was saying, there's an opportunity here. This is going to be big. We ought to think what we're going to do about this. So we kept talking about that. Where you're describing to the machine how to do something. And so telling it how to play tic-tac-toe, telling it how to play the board game Monopoly, telling it how to convert numbers from one base to another. And the idea of, okay, there's these simple instructions, but if you put them together, then you can synthesize something quite complex. It's a fascinating kind of mathematical thing. How can you make it fast? How can you make it small? And I went through several phases of doing more complex programs where people who were great programmers would look at my work, give me feedback on it, and you can be quite a good programmer. And it was kind of such an intense activity between the age of 13 and 17 that we learned a lot. Eventually, one of the programs we took on was the idea of the scheduling of our school. When should the classes meet? Who should be in which section? So you have all these requests for people who want different classes and keeping them small and not having the teachers teach too many classes in a row. Very complex kind of software problem. And actually, when the school first asked me to do it, when I was 15, I said that I didn't know how. And they asked some adults to do it, and that didn't work. And then about a year later, I'd figured out how to do it. And so my friends and I actually did the software that did all this high school scheduling. It had some fantastic benefits to us. We got paid for doing it. It was exactly the kind of complex problem that developed my skills very well. And, we got some degree of control over who was in our classes. And so, it combined the best of everything. Initially, when that teletype showed up, there were probably 20 kids who sort of showed an interest. And it was confusing enough that it got winnowed down to about 8 or 9 fairly quickly who were quite serious about it. And then there were about 4 of us who were hyper serious, kind of doing it day and night. And 2 of them were 2 years older than I was, and 1 was my same age. Now, in a high school, people are 2 years ahead of you. They don't socialize with the young kids all that much. So the idea that we had this group of 4 of us, was kind of unusual. We called it the Lakeside Programming Group. And one of the companies we'd been doing work for went bankrupt, the one in Seattle. And so we went to one in Portland, Oregon, Computer Center Corporation, C Cubed, which had been in the University District in Seattle. And we'd spent a lot of time there. And they were wonderful to us. They weren't a well-run business, so they went bankrupt. So this company down in Portland, Oregon, said, hey, we're not just going to give you computer time. You have to do something. So we agreed to write this payroll program. And a payroll program is surprisingly complicated. There's all these taxes and reports and things at the state level and federal level. Anyway, they said, well, if you could write one of those, we'd at least give you free computer time. And so I negotiated that deal. And the 2 older members, Paul Allen and Rick, said, well, there's not enough work to go around, so we're going to take charge of this. And I said, okay, I'm not that interested, because I had in mind how I wanted to do the payroll program. And so they they messed around for about 3 months, didn't get much done, and then said, well, you join back up. And I said, okay, but, so I'm in charge of this, and, it's going to kind of set a precedent for future activities. But they said, no, that's fine. And so we actually finished this payroll program. It was a lot of work. The friend who was my age, Kent Evans, and I ended up doing the lion's share of the work. He was killed in a mountain climbing accident. And so then there were just 3 of us left who'd been extremely involved, including Paul Allen, who was the one who was reading the magazines even more than I was. And he was the one who actually saw this computer on a chip, so-called microprocessor, in a very small, obscure article. But he saw that it would be deeply important and brought that to me in 1971. So we were still 15. I was 15, and he was 17 at the time. So these CQ people have this computer, which is a time-sharing computer, and they're letting us come in at night. And they had this deal with the company who made the computer, Digital Equipment Corporation, that rental payments. Well, that was a fair analysis if we could get the system to fail, and we did in kind of this brute force approach. And so they would report that as a problem and delay their rental payment. Well, as a few months went by, actually